Tonight, something shifted in the money game, and most people still haven't noticed. A quiet line buried in official balance sheets is telling us one thing. The fiat story is messy, and gold is still sitting in the room like a loaded weapon. They keep saying the system is backed by trust. But the system itself keeps leaving breadcrumbs that say otherwise. And here's the real event. Policymakers are openly flirting with a new monetary reset where gold becomes the anchor again, maybe not for your bank deposits, but for the paper notes and the global scoreboard. If that happens, the price of gold doesn't rise. The price gets rewritten. We're going to walk through the breadcrumbs, the incentives, and the trapdoors. No fluff, no worship, no doom fantasy, just the mechanics. And yes, this is educational. We manage risk. Now watch this. For decades, we've been trained to say the dollar is not backed by gold. It's a clean sentence. It feels modern. It feels sophisticated. But balance sheets don't care about vibes. On official statements, there's still a gold certificate line sitting there like an old scar that never healed. It's not a full gold standard. It's not redemption at the counter, but it is collateral language. And collateral language matters, because collateral is what the system uses when trust cracks. Fact, the paper notes in circulation are recorded as liability. Fact, collateral is recorded against those notes. Interpretation, even in a fiat era, the architecture keeps a gold-shaped emergency exit. Why would they keep it? Because gold solves problems that politics creates, and politics has created a monster. The monster is the reserve currency trap. We all feel it, even if we don't have a name for it. Our country runs deficits, exports paper, and the rest of the world hoards that paper to trade with each other. That sounds like power. It's also a slow bleed. If the world needs your currency to function, the world needs you to supply it. And the easiest way to supply it is to buy more from them than you sell to them. So the reserve currency becomes the world's oxygen tank, and our manufacturing base becomes the casualty. Here's the contradiction they don't say out loud. The dollar's strength can hollow out the real economy. Now pause here. If the system is so perfect, why does it require permanent imbalance to keep running? That question is the first breadcrumb. The next breadcrumb is language. Over the last few years, more high-level voices have started saying the quiet part out loud. We may need a grand global reordering. That phrase is not poetic. It's technical. It means the rules of settlement, reserves, and trust are getting renegotiated. A new Bretton Woods-style moment. And when people at that level say it, they're not daydreaming. They're preparing. So what would a reordering need? It needs an anchor. Because a system without an anchor becomes a casino, and casinos eventually burn down. Gold is the oldest anchor. Not because it's magical, because it's scarce, globally recognized, politically neutral, and nobody can print it at midnight. Now the third breadcrumb is even louder. You'll hear a certain golden rule repeated in politics. The one who has the gold makes the rules. It sounds like a meme, but in negotiations, it's a blueprint. Because if a new system is negotiated around reserves, whoever holds the biggest pile walks in with leverage, and our side holds a very large pile. That matters. Not morally, strategically. Now we need to get brutally clear about the play they could run. A gold standard doesn't have to mean you show up with $1 and get a gold coin. That's the old movie. The modern version could be narrower and smarter. It could mean backing only the physical notes, not the entire banking system. Because deposits are a different beast. Deposits are credit. Notes are currency. And here's where people get emotionally confused. Money is the asset with no counterparty risk. Currency is the token the system uses to move. Gold behaves like money. Paper behaves like currency. So if officials wanted to restore confidence without collapsing the credit machine, they'd aim at the notes, not the deposits. Now, what happens if you try to back the notes? You do math. You take the total value of notes outstanding and you compare it to the value of gold held at an official price. And here's the punchline. If the official price is absurdly low, the backing looks tiny, but the price is not a law of nature. It's a policy lever. So the entire trick is this. Change the official price, and you change the perceived backing overnight. This is why the price number matters more than the metal number. This is why the conversation about $10,000 gold keeps surfacing, not as a prediction, as a requirement if they wanted a certain backing ratio. Now watch the incentive structure. If you reprice gold upward, you effectively devalue the currency in gold terms. That can fix trade imbalances by making imports more expensive and exports more competitive. It can also re-rate the value of existing reserves on the balance sheet. And that re-rating can create budget space. This is the part that makes people uncomfortable, because it feels like a cheat code. But governments love cheat codes. So the question isn't, would they do it because it's fair? The question is, would they do it because it's useful? And it's useful. Here's the next breadcrumb. Central banks. Central banks don't need to tweet for us to see their behavior. They buy gold, not every quarter. not as a trend line on a cute chart. They buy it as a message, because in their world, gold is a tier 1 asset. No default risk, no political promise required. Now ask yourself this. If gold is barbarous relic, why are the largest institutions on earth still hoarding it? Why do they keep stacking it while they tell retail investors it's irrelevant? This is where we stop being naive. They don't talk you out of gold because it's useless. They talk you out of gold because it's competition. Now keep your eyes on what they do, not what they say. When there's geopolitical stress, gold flows into vaults. When there's currency stress, gold becomes a seatbelt. And in a global reordering, gold becomes the table itself. So, what are our main takeaways here? First, the system is openly signaling that the current reserve setup is straining. Second, the language of reordering is a flashing red light that a reset is being discussed. Third, gold sits inside the system as both collateral and reserve, even if the public story pretends it doesn't. Fourth, repricing gold is a lever that can devalue currency, rebalance trade, and recapitalize balance sheets in one move. Fifth, the public will be the last to hear about it. And here's the scary part. If a new system is designed, it won't be designed to make you richer. It will be designed to make the machine run. We need to think like engineers, not cheerleaders. Now let's go deeper into the mechanism, because this is where most people get lost. A gold-based system is self-funding in a strange way. You don't need to find money to buy gold. You set a price. You stand ready to buy and sell at that price. If miners sell into it, you issue certificates or credits. If people demand gold, you exchange at the window. The key is credibility. And credibility requires one thing: enough gold at that price to calm the panic. So the higher the official price, the easier it is to claim coverage, because the same pile of metal suddenly covers a larger value of currency. That's not a conspiracy. That's arithmetic. Now, here's the open loop. If repricing gold is so powerful, why haven't they done it already? Because timing is everything. You reprice gold when you need a reset, not when you're enjoying the party. A reset is a fire extinguisher. You don't smash the glass until the smoke is in the hallway. So what would force the smoke? Debt, deficits, and the political demand for endless spending. We're living inside that pressure cooker right now, and the more they spend, the harder it gets to pretend the old rules still work. Now watch the psychological trick. They will try to make you focus on Bitcoin versus gold. They want the debate to be a culture war, because culture wars distract from balance sheets. But central banks don't care about your culture war. They care about settlement. They care about reserves. They care about assets that survive sanctions, wars, and broken promises. That's why gold keeps winning the boring contest. Gold can be a risk-off asset in panic. Gold can be a risk-on asset when liquidity floods. Bitcoin can be explosive, but it also behaves like a high-volatility tech trade during stress. That doesn't make it bad. It makes it different. Now, let's bring this back to us. We're not here to worship a metal. We're here to understand a regime change. Because regime changes are where wealth transfers happen. And the first sign of a regime change is narrative drift. When insiders start repeating global reordering, that's narrative drift. When official papers start criticizing reserve currency distortions, that's narrative drift. When gold quietly stays on the balance sheet as collateral, that's narrative drift. The story is changing, slowly, then suddenly. So what should we watch? Well, we watch for 3 signals. We watch for new international conferences and framework language. We watch for policy talk about trade imbalances and manufacturing revival tied to currency reform. We watch for changes in how gold is accounted for, audited, or discussed publicly. Because the second they start polishing gold's image, they're preparing the public for a price rewrite. Now, here's the question that should keep you up. If they announced tomorrow that notes would be backed at a new gold price, what happens to everything else? What happens to bonds? What happens to stock valuations? What happens to purchasing power? What happens to the people holding only paper promises? This is why they move slowly, because every lever pulls on 10 other levers, and resets are messy. But messy doesn't mean impossible. Messy means staged. Now we need to address the emotional trap. People hear gold standard, and they picture a simple, honest world. That's nostalgia. Don't fall for nostalgia. A modern gold-linked system could still be heavily managed. It could still be controlled. It could still prioritize governments and institutions over citizens. Gold is not a moral upgrade. Gold is a constraint tool. And whoever controls the window controls the constraint. So our job is not to romanticize. Our job is to position with eyes open. Now let's cut to the raw incentive. If you are a leader who wants to win, what do you want? You want leverage in negotiations? You want trade advantage? You want fiscal room? You want a narrative that makes the public accept painful adjustments. Repricing gold gives you all of that. It says, we're restoring honesty, while quietly, we're devaluing your paper. And that's why the reordering talk is not academic. It's political theater with financial consequences. Now, before we go further, I want you to do something. Look at your own assumptions. If you assume the current system is permanent, you will always be late. If you assume resets are impossible, you will be shocked when they happen. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. We've seen multiple monetary regimes in a single century. The pattern is boring. Stability, boom, war, printing, distortion, crisis, conference, new rules, then repeat. So the only real question is, are we close to the conference phase? And the breadcrumbs suggest we're closer than most people think. Now watch this final twist. If a reset happens, gold doesn't just move because investors buy it. Gold moves because it becomes the denominator. It becomes the unit. And when the denominator changes, the entire chart book gets redrawn. That's why the number people whisper isn't 2,500 or 3,000, it's 5 figures. Because 5 figures is what the math demands if you try to make the notes look covered at any meaningful ratio. Again, possible, not promised. Let's talk about the weirdest part of all this, the official gold price inside government accounting. Markets trade gold every day, but governments can keep a separate number in a statute book, like it's a different century. That number doesn't need to match reality. It just needs to exist for bookkeeping. And when that bookkeeping number is far below the market number, it creates a pressure valve, because the day they change that number, they can instantly revalue an asset they already own. Same metal, new headline. New? Now ask yourself, why would any institution keep an outdated price tag on purpose? Because an outdated price tag is optionality. Fact, revaluation doesn't create new ounces of gold. Fact, revaluation changes the currency value of the ounces. Interpretation, it's a political way to admit debasement while calling it stability. And here's another open loop. If they revalue gold higher, who eats the loss? Not the gold holder, the paper holder, because your paper buys less gold than it did before. So the reset is really a transfer from the saver in currency to the holder of hard assets. Now, there's a second order effect that gets ignored. A revaluation can interact with collateral and liabilities in a way that unlocks policy breathing room. Think of the system like a dam. Collateral is the concrete. Notes are the water pressure. Gold revaluation is like adding steel inside the concrete without pouring a new dam. It lets officials claim stronger backing while they reshuffle lines and buy time. And what do politicians do with time? They spend it. Now watch the international angle, because this is where the plot gets spicy. A global system needs agreement, even if the agreement is ugly. Some blocs want less dependence on one currency, others want to keep control. So the compromise can look like a neutral settlement anchor. Gold is the simplest neutral anchor every side already understands. Different wrappers, same core. A scarce asset becomes the referee. And when gold becomes the referee, paper games get exposed. Because paper can be printed, referees can't. If the next system is negotiated behind closed doors, who gets the best seats? The people with the vaults. And we get the press release after the ink dries. So we don't wait for permission. We position before the rules change. That's the whole game. One more breadcrumb to watch is audit language. When officials suddenly talk about verifying reserves, modernizing accounting, or marking assets properly, that's not a paperwork hobby. That's stage lighting. They don't polish the vault doors unless they plan to open the building. So if you start seeing headlines about reserve transparency, new reporting standards, or international committees studying settlement reform, don't yawn. That's the lobby music before the main act. And when the music changes, the price board usually changes with it, fast for everyone. Now you might be thinking, okay, but what do we do with this? We do what we always do. We measure, we don't gamble. We build a plan that survives multiple scenarios. We diversify like adults, not like influencers. We hold some assets that do well in inflation. We hold some assets that do well in deflation. We hold some assets that do well in political chaos. Gold is not the only tool, but it's one of the few tools that has survived every regime change for thousands of years. And that survival trait is the entire point. Now here's where we create our edge. Most people wait for headlines. We watch for structure. We watch for policy language. We watch for reserve behavior. We watch for the gradual normalization of an idea that used to be crazy, because the system doesn't announce the reset with fireworks. It leaks it. It floats trial balloons. It prepares the public, then it moves. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I want you to be honest in the comments. If the official price of gold was repriced overnight, what asset in your portfolio would get hit first? And if we're wrong, where will it show first? Policy language, central bank behavior, or market stress? Drop your answers. We learn faster together. And if you want this kind of straight high signal breakdown without the fluff, hit subscribe. We're building a crew that thinks in systems, not slogans. Now, the next part is the one they won't say on stage. A reset doesn't just change prices, it changes permission. When money becomes a national security tool, access gets regulated. If gold becomes the anchor, governments may not love the idea of unlimited private ownership competing with official allocation. That's not fear-mongering. That's how strategic materials behave when shortages hit. So the cliffhanger is simple. If the reset talk keeps getting louder, the real race may not be, can gold go higher? The real race is, will the rules change before you're positioned? Because price is one game, access is another. And the second game is the one that decides who gets to play at all.